This DNP tutorial is about creating a search term table for advanced research. I'd like to show you a completed search term table before I start discussing the importance of it. So you'll see here we have several columns, each one representing some element of a PICO question. You can see controlled vocabulary terms have been recorded as well as keywords, everything expressed in between parentheses. So this is the final product that is really half of the battle when you're conducting a big research project. Once you've created your search term table and recorded all the terms, all the controlled vocabulary terms, as well as keywords, you're ready to begin your searches in the various databases. I would say this is half the work right here is creating the table. So why do we utilize it? Well, it's a great way to organize your thinking about your search, and it provides a visualization of your search strategy. It acts as a record of all the terms that you will search from all of the databases, so you won't lose track, whether or not you've searched for a particular term or not. It's right there on the table. And it makes replication of the search possible by you or anybody, really. Preparing to make a search term table, you begin by asking a clinical question, which is usually expressed as a PICO question. And then the table will include columns for each required subject. Here's an example of a PICO question with multiple outcomes and complex interventions. What is the effectiveness of patient-centered self-care education interventions compared to standard education for adult patients with heart failure on knowledge or self-care behaviors or quality of life and on readmissions? If I isolate the PICO elements, it's helpful. The population, adult patients with heart failure, the intervention is multifaceted, patient-centered self-care education interventions. The comparator is standard education, and the outcomes are multiple as well, knowledge or self-care behaviors or quality of life, and readmissions. And just note that readmissions could be an outcome as I've recorded it here, or it could be a separate T column for time. It doesn't matter as long as it has a column. It doesn't matter what letter you give it. There are certain adjectives and nouns that aren't helpful in the search term table. So for example, adult patients with heart failure, it's really not a good idea to search by adult in the databases, including PubMed. It's better to just exclude any articles you find that are not about an adult population. In the intervention, patient-centered self-care education interventions, that's a term that we're not going to search for. It's way too narrow. The comparator is typically not searched because it's the standard, and whatever it is will inevitably be discussed in any new research, any new intervention. And then in the outcomes, self-care behaviors, the word behaviors is one that we're not going to be searching for because it's also too narrow. So a little bit more about the intervention. It's complex, including several terms that are all required in my results: patient-centered and self-care and education. So I have really three things there that I'm looking for. As a result, I'll need a column for each of them. And then there are the outcomes, which are also multiple. What's different here is we have optional outcomes as well as a required one. So we're looking for knowledge or self-care behaviors or quality of life as outcomes. Even just one of those would be okay, this or that or that. But we must have something about readmissions. That part's required. So we're going to have just two columns for outcomes. One that consists of 3 terms joined by or, and then the second column is readmissions. And if you visualize the search term table, you can see exactly what I'm talking about here. I've also removed self-care from this particular O column because I'm already searching for it over here, and it would be redundant to include it here as well. Backtracking, how do we start? Well, you need to just pick a tool to create your table. I like Google Documents and just drawing a table. Whatever tool you use, just make sure that it's one that you can share with others and give them editing privileges. In other words, you want it to be live, like a document on OneDrive through Pace or something through Google. You might be working alone, or you might be working with a couple of faculty members or some other small group. So everyone would need to have editing privileges. So you start by recording some keywords just to get started. So again, I've indicated here why I dropped self-care from one of the outcome columns because I've already recorded it as an intervention. And I've just, noted cardiac failure as a keyword phrase under the population, and then health education under education interventions. So this is my very, very cursory start. And this is the point where I go into the databases and I start looking for the controlled vocabulary. Um, what I'm going to do now is show you that process. So this is the Pace University Libraries homepage. You'll go to the databases. You click P for PubMed, and then this is where you'll land. Normally, we would start typing in this box right here to look for articles, but we're not looking for articles yet. We are looking for controlled vocabulary as well as keywords. And we want to record all that in our search term table. So I'm going to go to the mesh database and I'm going to type in something to get us started. I'm going to try cardiac failure. There is no match for that. The right term is heart failure. So that is something that I would indicate on my table, and I would write mesh in parentheses there to show that that's a mesh term. And then I would record cardiac failure as a keyword. Let's try one more in mesh. How about cardiomyopathies? So there is a match for that. And by the way, it's always a good idea to look at all of the results to see if there is something spot on in this first page of results. My eye is on cardiomyopathy dilated because that's directly related to heart failure. So I'm sort of making a note of that right now, but not yet recording it. Let me click on my first search term, cardiomyopathies, which is a mesh term. And this is the definition of it here. In fact, dilated cardiomyopathy is mentioned here. We're not doing anything with subheadings when we're doing these sort of almost like a systematic review search. This is reserved for less sophisticated, advanced searching. Maybe I just wanted to quickly find out the, drug therapy for hallux rigidus or something. That's when I would use these subheadings. But for the type of search that we're doing, we're just going to skip them, and we're going to go down here and we're going to look at these entry terms and see if there are any useful keywords that I can add to my search term table. There's no way I would add all of these, but just sort of selectively look for ones that seem to be used a lot in the literature and clinically. Then I keep scrolling and I find my mesh tree. You can see that there are many terms underneath cardiomyopathies. Mesh automatically explodes this term, whatever term it is that you're considering, it automatically explodes it and will include all the subheadings unless you tell it not to. So in this case, I would tell it not to. And the way you do that is by clicking this box. Do not include mesh terms found below this term in the hierarchy. However, I am interested in at least one of the terms below in the hierarchy, the dilated. So first, I'm going to make sure I have cardiomyopathies recorded in my table, and I do. And I put a little symbol to indicate do not include mesh terms below that term. So this is really important note-taking so that when I do conduct my search, I can remember exactly how to proceed. So I'm going to click on cardiomyopathy dilated, and I get that definition again and see heart failure. And there's nothing below it on the tree. So this is just going to be a term that I record in my table, and I've done so. So, you get started like this, and you go into the databases and you start recording things more systematically or formally with, the name of the database. Also make a note of the term as a keyword that needs to be searched, because we search by controlled vocabulary and we also search by keyword. And this is discussed more in the first video in this series. So let's go into CINAHL and see how they deal with the controlled vocabulary. So here in the middle of the page is the CINAHL headings. There's also a link over here. And this is where you type in your term. So let's try cardiomyopathy here and see what happens. The default search is ranking by what the database thinks is the most relevant. Not sure if I agree that that's true. So I'm going to try term begins with and see what happens. You can try both of these when you're looking up the headings. Okay, this is a better result. Cardiomyopathy, it says use myocardial diseases. However, reading the description, I don't think this is a good choice for my PICO question in my search term table. It says general only, prefer specifics. And I would say that there's going to be something probably about the dilated cardiomyopathy down here. Yeah, dilated cardiomyopathy. So instead of recording myocardial diseases, I'm just going to record dilated cardiomyopathy dilated. And yes, so I've had that term as a mesh term and as a CINAHL term. And we would just keep repeating this process for all the keywords that I have at the beginning. Let's see, right here. You have to start somewhere, but as you go, you might identify additional keywords to add to your table as well. And that's what I've done here. Like, for example, when I was looking up quality of life, I also noticed that some people use the phrase life quality when they're looking up that controlled vocabulary. And the places where you can find these keywords are here in these entry terms. So for example, if I do, let's see if I can do it here with quality of life. Well, first I note that there is one term below quality of life on the tree, and I'm fine with including that. But this is what I'm talking about, these entry terms. These are other search terms that people have typed into the database. And if I were to type any of these into the mesh database up here, I'm still going to land on quality of life. So for example, if I did health-related quality of life, I still land on quality of life. That's what they mean by entry term, but they're useful because they sometimes function as good keywords. This one's probably too long, but life quality to me, that sounded good, so I added it to my search term table as a keyword. So let's see. Everything in each column should be fairly synonymous, and the terms will be joined with or when I run the searches. Ultimately, the columns will be joined together by the term and. In order to be effective and accurate, the search must return at least one word from every column. So in the next videos in this series, you'll see the search process in detail utilizing this table.